Imagine waking up tomorrow to the news that the currency sitting in your safe, the one you've been told for years is on the verge of a historic comeback, has been officially and permanently rendered obsolete, not by a miraculous revaluation, but by a quiet, governmental decree that introduces an entirely new monetary system, leaving your carefully hoarded stacks of paper as nothing more than expensive souvenirs of a bet that never paid off. This isn't a dystopian fantasy. This is a very real, albeit unspoken, possibility that hangs over the entire speculative market of the Iraqi dinar, a shadow that the gurus and pump and dump schemes deliberately ignore because it doesn't fit their narrative of inevitable, life-changing wealth. The truth they don't want you to know is that the stability of the Iraqi dinar isn't just about its fluctuating exchange rate against the dollar on a given day. It's about its very existence in its current form and the monumental, almost insurmountable challenges that prevent it from achieving the mythical RV, or revaluation, that has been promised for over a decade. The entire premise sold to hopeful investors in the West is built on a fundamental misunderstanding of global economics, a misunderstanding that is actively exploited by those selling the currency at massively inflated prices. They point to Iraq's vast oil reserves, its potential for economic growth, and whispers of political change as undeniable proof that a revaluation is just around the corner. But they conveniently omit the terrifyingly fragile foundation upon which the Iraqi economy is built. Let's be brutally honest for a moment. A nation's currency is a direct reflection of its economic health, political stability, and global standing. And when you apply even the most basic of these metrics to Iraq, the picture that emerges is not one of imminent, explosive growth, but of a protracted and painful recovery from decades of war, sanctions, and internal corruption that has seeped into the very marrow of its financial institutions. The Central Bank of Iraq operates in a constant state of crisis management, not growth management, using its dollar reserves not to engineer a revaluation, but to perform a desperate and continuous balancing act to prevent the dinar's value from collapsing entirely, propping it up through direct currency auctions that bleed the country's foreign reserves. Think about that for a second. The primary mechanism for stability is a life support system, not a growth engine. Furthermore, the political deadlock in Baghdad creates an environment of perpetual uncertainty, where long-term economic planning is impossible, and where crucial financial laws, including the federal budget, are routinely held hostage by factional infighting, meaning there is no cohesive national strategy to strengthen the currency because the government itself can barely function. Add to this the rampant corruption that sees billions of dollars in oil revenue, the country's only real economic lifeline, mysteriously vanish before it can ever reach the national treasury. And you have a perfect storm of economic weakness that makes the concept of a revaluation, from its current state, not just unlikely, but a financial impossibility. The math simply does not add up for the Iraqi dinar to undergo a significant revaluation, say to even a fraction of a dollar. The money supply would need to be drastically reduced, which would trigger a deflationary spiral and cripple the already struggling local economy, or Iraq's GDP would need to multiply overnight, which is not how economies work. The gurus will never tell you about the money supply, known as M2, which has exploded over the years, creating a massive overhang of currency that fundamentally devalues each individual dinar note you hold. They want you to focus on the dream of oil wealth while ignoring the economic reality that this wealth is already factored into the current low exchange rate, a rate that accurately reflects the immense risks, the political chaos, and the structural deficiencies that still plague the nation. The stability you hear about is a carefully constructed illusion, a mirage maintained by the central bank's intervention to prevent a total loss of public confidence, not a launching pad for a new global reserve currency. So, before you consider investing another dollar into this speculative dream, you must ask yourself one critical question. Are you betting on the economic reality of a nation? Or are you betting on a carefully marketed fairy tale designed to separate you from your money by selling you a currency at a price far above its actual tradable value in the one place that actually matters, Iraq itself? Now, let's pull back the curtain even further and expose the very engine that keeps this speculative dream alive. The sophisticated ecosystem of misinformation and psychological manipulation designed to create a false consensus and make you feel like you're missing out on the investment opportunity of a lifetime if you don't buy more dinar right now. This isn't just a few people sharing hopeful opinions. This is a well-oiled machine that operates on multiple fronts, from slickly produced YouTube channels and cryptic intel sites to private online forums and teleconferences, all creating an echo chamber where doubt is silenced and blind faith is rewarded. They have mastered the art of using just enough real economic news to sound credible, twisting reports from the International Monetary Fund or statements from the Central Bank of Iraq into a narrative of impending revaluation, deliberately ignoring the context and the overwhelming counter evidence that these same institutions provide. For instance, when the IMF praises Iraq for making incremental progress on economic reforms, the gurus will scream that this is the final green light for the RV, conveniently forgetting to mention that the same IMF report always highlights the severe risks of corruption, political instability, and the economy's overwhelming dependence on oil, which are the very factors preventing any revaluation. They thrive on ambiguity and the translation of complex bureaucratic language into the simple, thrilling promise of wealth, preying on the fact that most people won't read the original, dry, and cautiously worded documents for themselves. Another critical tactic is the constant moving of the goalposts. Remember when the revaluation was supposedly tied to the end of the Chapter Thy sanctions? It came and went, and nothing happened. Then it was tied to the government formation, which happened, and nothing happened. Then it was the digital currency, then the new budget, then the removal of the dollar from the currency auction. Each time a new trigger is invented to explain why the prophecy hasn't been fulfilled yet, creating a perpetual cycle of hope and anticipation that keeps people invested, both emotionally and financially. This is coupled with the powerful fear of missing out, the FOMO, that they expertly cultivate by sharing stories, often completely unverified, of wealthy elites, foreign governments, and powerful banks supposedly buying up billions of dinar in secret, implying that there's a hidden truth known only to the powerful, while the little guy has to fight for the scraps. What they never explain is why, if this revaluation is such a guaranteed secret, the entire business model of these same gurus is to sell the secret to as many people as possible, thereby destroying the very exclusivity they claim exists. The entire structure is a paradox that collapses under the slightest scrutiny. Furthermore, they create a sense of community and belonging, making you feel like part of an enlightened group that is smarter than the so-called naysayers and mainstream financial advisors, who they dismiss as being part of the banking cabal that wants to suppress the dinar. This us versus them mentality is a classic cult tactic designed to isolate you from outside opinions and critical thinking, making you reliant on the gurus for your information and your hope. The final, and perhaps most damaging layer, is the complete disconnect from the ground reality in Iraq itself. While investors in the West are being sold a story of imminent wealth, the actual Iraqi people, the ones who use the dinar every single day to buy bread, pay rent, and live their lives, have zero expectation of a revaluation. For them, the dinar's stability is not about becoming millionaires. It's about the currency not collapsing further and wiping out their life savings, which is a constant, genuine fear. They see the value of their wages and savings eroded by inflation, and they understand that the central bank's primary goal is crisis aversion, not making foreign speculators rich. This stark contrast between the fantasy sold overseas and the harsh economic reality lived by millions of Iraqis is the most powerful evidence that the revaluation narrative is a manufactured product for export only, a cruel fantasy that has no basis in the country it supposedly concerns. When you understand that the people who actually live and breathe this currency every day don't believe in the fairy tale, it should make you question everything you've been told by the voices who profit from your belief. So, where does this leave you, the individual who may be holding this currency or considering buying into the dream, armed now with the cold, hard truths that the gurus have worked so hard to conceal? It leaves you at a critical crossroads where you must make a decision based on reality, not on marketed fantasy. And the most powerful step you can take is to completely redefine what success and a return on investment look like in this situation. The truth they absolutely do not want you to know is that the greatest revaluation that can possibly occur is not of the Iraqi dinar's exchange rate, but a revaluation of your own personal financial intelligence and your ability to discern fact from fiction in a world filled with sophisticated financial predators. Let's be unequivocally clear. The chance of the Iraqi dinar undergoing a significant, life-changing revaluation in the foreseeable future is statistically zero, not because of a conspiracy, but because of the immutable laws of economics, the political realities on the ground, and the fundamental purpose of a national currency, which is to facilitate trade within a country, not to serve as a lottery ticket for foreign speculators. Holding onto this currency based on the hope of an RV is financially equivalent to holding a losing lottery ticket from a draw that already happened. The event is over, the results are in, and the currency's value is exactly what the open market, specifically the Iraqi market, where it is actually used, has determined it to be. The real investment opportunity here is not in the paper itself, but in the lesson it teaches about due diligence, critical thinking, and the psychological vulnerabilities that we all have when presented with a seemingly easy path to wealth. This is your moment to reclaim your power and your capital by shifting your focus from a passive, hope-based investment to an active, knowledge-based financial strategy. Instead of pouring more money into a stagnant currency based on whispers and intel, consider what that same capital could do if it were invested in a diversified portfolio of assets that have a proven, historical track record of growth, such as low-cost index funds, precious metals as a hedge, or even your own education and skill development, which guarantees a return no market can ever take away from you. The energy and time you currently spend deciphering cryptic guru messages would be infinitely better spent learning the basics of personal finance, understanding how debt works, or exploring legitimate avenues for building wealth that don't rely on a geopolitical miracle. This isn't about giving up on a dream. It's about upgrading to a better, more realistic, and ultimately more achievable dream. One of financial literacy and security that isn't held hostage by the whims of a foreign government's monetary policy. The stability of your own financial future is far more important than the fictional stability of the Iraqi dinar. And it's a stability you can actually control through your own actions and decisions. You have been presented with a choice. You can continue to be a passenger on a ship that is never going to reach its promised destination. Or you can become the captain of your own vessel, steering it with purpose and knowledge toward a future you can actually shape. The information you've received in this video is your chart and your compass, providing you with the tools to navigate away from the siren song of get rich quick schemes and toward the solid ground of sound financial principles. The most profitable trade you can make today is not buying or selling dinar. It's trading hope for knowledge and speculation for strategy. This is your call to action. Not to wait for a notification on your phone that is never going to come, but to take one concrete step today towards securing your financial future on your own terms. Unsubscribe from the channels that feed you false hope, block the gurus who profit from your confusion, and instead, follow credible financial news, read books by established economists, and perhaps even speak with a certified financial planner who has a fiduciary duty to act in your best interest. Not sell you a fantasy. The truth has now been placed directly into your hands. What you do with it from this moment forward, is the only investment that truly matters. And it is an investment that is guaranteed to pay dividends for the rest of your life, regardless of what happens to any currency in any part of the world. Your financial liberation starts not with a revaluation, but with a decision to see the world as it is, not as you are told it might be.